Bob Geller, your host. Welcome to this episode of PR Done and Dunner. The podcast today is a follow-up to the last one we had. We invited a panel of PR folks and a core AI developer to talk about ChatGPT. And we know since it came out late last year, the buzz has been deafening about this technology. And it's also set up a horse race, I think, with vendors to incorporate it in their solutions. So I thought it would be great to take a step back and look more generally at AI and PR, very specifically, actually, of the large language model variety, like ChatGPT, and try to answer the questions, what is the state of AI and PR today and where are things going? And to get answers, I invited a roundtable panel, some very smart, accomplished people from the PR practitioner, blogger, and tech vendor worlds. And why don't I pause for a moment and we'll go around the virtual roundtable and let each panel participant introduce themselves. And we'll start out with Tressa.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tressa Robbins. I have worked in PR in both agency and corporate environments over the years. I'm now the Vice President of Customer Onboarding at Burrelles. I also serve as content and social media manager. I'm a 20+ year member of PRSA, served as past president of the St. Louis chapter and multiple other roles over the years. I'm also the professional advisor for the Southeast Missouri State University PRSSA chapter and an international member of PRCA.
Excellent. Thank you. And Zach?
Thanks, Bob. I'm Zach Cutler. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Propel. I've worked in PR my whole career, started an agency in 2009, and was frustrated that there wasn't better technology for PR. I've always been a data guy, and all of our clients at my agency were tech companies. And I was seeing all the innovation that they were bringing to their industries and how they were allowing their industries to be more data-driven, smarter, more streamlined. And my own industry of PR felt that it was a few decades behind. So I decided to sell my agency about 4.5 years ago and build the first PRM in the world, public relations management platform. Fast forward to today, and we have hundreds of customers. And just yesterday, we launched Amiga, which is the first artificial media intelligence tool in the industry. So excited to be here and to get into the topic.
Congratulations, and I saw the news in PR Week, so that is great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And why don't we welcome back Frank Strong. He's been a guest on the podcast before. Great to have you back, Frank. And Frank in some ways helped me organize this because he suggested panel participants. He also wrote a very authoritative blog post, but let Frank introduce himself. Frank,
thanks, Bob. I'm going to ping Zach too, because I didn't get an email about your launch, man. You're leaving me off your list here. What's going on, brother?
Can't ignore the influencers. Come on.
I got to hit someone on the marketing team for that. Sorry.
Can we spell PR? I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's okay. I always take a look. I'm not like a news-driven kind of person. I try to take an analytical view in hindsight. But hello, everybody. I'm Frank Strong. I've spent more than 20 years in PR. I've worked for agencies, small and large, then went in-house, working for startups, mid-market, and then a truly global organization in LexisNexis. Probably my claim to fame in technology started when I was on the agency side, and we had a brand new startup that was doing this cool thing and taking the old Bacon's media databases or thereabouts and putting it on the web. And that company was called Vocus, and I was a beta customer. And probably 10 years later, I wound up being their director of public relations in-house, worked for them for a few years, did a bunch of acquisitions. And then more recently, in the last 4 years, or 2016, I started a boutique consulting firm. But one of the things I do on the side is I've had a blog forever. And I write about what the PR technology vendors are doing. And just to give you some context, I went back, did some math. So I do kind of 3 different things. I do like a PR Tech Sum, which is a monthly summary of all the PR tech news. I do briefings, which is kind of like what you would do with a tech analyst, like a Forrester or Gartner. So the vendor will give me a presentation and a demo, and I'll ask questions and write something up And last thing I do is hands-on demo, like a product and give it a trial. Why do I say all this? Because I went back and did the math, and I've written 42 tech sums that are easily 2,000 words in total.
Wow,
So over the last 4 years, I've probably written 150,000 words on PR technology. And to give you some context, the average business book today is about 40 or 50,000 words. So I've spent an awful lot of time looking at this stuff and doing it, trying to distill it for the PR community so they can understand what's happening in technology and really help them to make decisions about the tools they may or may not want to procure.
Now, the big question is, have you been indexed your blog by ChatGPT? Probably, I think.
I don't know. I didn't ask ChatGPT to write my bio, because if you do a Google search, there are all sorts of people with my name. They don't all look like me. The Frank Strongs of the world are very diverse, but there's a football player, there's a lawyer, there's a chancellor, there's a couple of folks in professions that I won't speak of on air, but we are a diverse group.
I know, because I mistakenly tagged the wrong Frank Strong, I think, in a tweet once. But
That guy is a PhD and now teaching at a university, I think in Texas. But yeah.
Well, you could be called worse things, I guess. Anyway, AI and PR is not new, but the perception I had, and I think many did when it was launched, is that ChatGPT changes everything.
Mhm.
And I think it's gotten people to reconsider the state of AI. No doubt caused headaches and sleepless nights for tech vendors that employ AI in their solutions. So I'd like to hear from the tech vendors. Have there been headaches or sleepless nights? But first, Frank, I mentioned you wrote a very authoritative blog post last month, and I'll include a link in the show notes, that kind of took a look at the vendor landscape and the adoption of AI. Could you do us a favor and just summarize that for the audience, please?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let me first, I'm going to maybe make some computer scientists cringe, but I wanted to point out that there's a lot of views of AI that are very driven by Hollywood and the robots and taking over our jobs. And when it comes down to it, what we're really talking about is a sophisticated calculator making statistics, probability assumptions about words, right? Because words have a structure and a number, and we've got things like subjects and predicates and noun, verb, adjectives, and it's able to predict. We put words together in a certain order, and so it's able to predict things. It's not alive. It doesn't have an opinion. It doesn't have feelings, right? And I think people are getting caught up in the hype. I think people fall into two camps. They fall into one camp of, oh my gosh, this is taking over my job, and I'm very worried about it. And you have another camp that's like, this stuff is silly, and they're doing what's called hate prompting and putting all these questions in that they know the AI is going to trip over and it produces a ridiculous result, and they screenshot it, post it on Twitter, and laugh about it.
Yeah.
The truth is really somewhere in the middle. So to get to your question, I'll try to make this quick because folks will get sick of me talking. This post, so we've got a couple of things in generative AI, GAI, which is what ChatGPT is. You've got Agility PR, right, owned by Innodata. They've got a tool very much like ChatGPT. They're using it to generate text, whether that's a pitch or a press release. They call it Copilot. Their positioning is interesting, that Copilot assists a pilot in flying. It is not the pilot. And so this assists PR people in writing. I think that is a very conscious decision they made. They have a partnership with Burrelles. Burrelles, I believe, is white labeling it. I'll let Tressa speak to that later. There are a couple of other less well-known vendors that are using generative AI now. That is to produce it. There are other vendors right now that you may know of that are using generative AI in ways other than to generate content. In other words, they're using it to understand content. Folks like Onclusive are using it for summarization of articles. Another startup called Profit, I'm actually going to look at that product tomorrow. They're working on a generative AI tool. Meltwater is looking at it for social media posts. TVIs, which does broadcast monitoring, and a lot of the conventional tools that you may use have TVI's white label for broadcast. They're using it for topic identification and summarization. You got folks like Propel. Zach will talk about this a little bit. They use what I what I would briefly call pitch analytics. Just kind of trying to make better decisions about when you're pitching, what you're pitching, who you're pitching. I'll let him speak to that later. Profits, trying to do a little bit of that. They're trying to move that upstream and make predictions about whether or not your pitch will land. So as you're typing your pitch in, it's making an assessment based on who you're targeting, looking at what they've written and trying to understand, trying to make a prediction about whether or not that would actually resonate with them. We've got a whole bunch of tools kind of behind the scenes, like uses of tagging and organizing data, so making better search results, making suggestions. Hey, I've seen you pitch to these reporters. Have you thought about this one? This person's new to the space, but they're writing about topics that we see are related to your pitches. Content discovery, annotations, right? So being able to tag, if you're an airline and you have hundreds of thousands of articles coming into your media monitoring system, you're able to tag this and categorize it in certain ways. And then I'll throw out one last interesting one, and then pass it back to you, Bob. But agility, for example, and I'm pretty sure TBIs is doing this too. They're using AI for image processing, right? Recognizing images. Now, I believe that is a little different than ChatGPT because it's machine learning, which basically works like, you show them a picture of a dog 1,000 times and soon this AI starts to recognize what a dog is. It's kind of repetitive, almost the way that we learn. They're using that to identify logos. So if there's a logo in a broadcast, but they don't mention your company by name, how else are you going to know you got that mention, except it's able to identify the image? So a lot of interesting things going on AI. I think it's exciting. I think ChatGPT is getting all of the attention, but that technology has other uses, and there are other AI applications that have uses in PR technology today that people may be using and not even know.
That makes sense, a lot of sense, and thank you for that, that overview. I'm going to ask Zach and Tressa in a moment what they think, but first let me kind of reframe the question in that, given the buzz with ChatGPT, a lot of the focus is on some of the things we know or it seems to do well, and that is generate content and summarize content and perhaps help PR folks with pitch writing, things like pitch writing, maybe pitch targeting. Would you agree? And like I said, I asked Zach and Tressa as well. Was there anything out there in the PR tech vendor world that was as good as that? And well, let's start with Zach. I mean, Zach, I know you, I saw your webinar yesterday, and I know you introduced Amiga. And is that employing ChatGPT per se, or did you put a version of ChatGPT in your, your
Yeah.
your...
So it's a good question. So basically, just to zoom out a little bit. So Amiga stands for Artificial Media Intelligence Generator and Assistant.
Okay.
And it's essentially the first AMI tool. We've coined this term yesterday in our webinar. It's the first category we've coined as a company since we created PRM 4 years ago, which has really caught on in the industry. And we think AMI will catch on as well. Basically, what AMI is all applications of AI specifically for the PR and comms industry. So AGI is artificial general intelligence, which is basically AI pertaining to all information in the world. And ChatGPT, for example, could be considered more on the AGI side. Now, a tool like Amiga would be AMI, which is essentially taking the global enormous model that OpenAI has built, which is called GPT-3, and it's called fine-tuning the model for a specific use case or specific use cases.
Okay.
We have an enormous data set of millions of real pitches that have been sent through our Gmail and Outlook plugins, of over 1 million journalists and over 500 million real articles. And so we've been able to train the first AMI model in the world with the most comprehensive data set for PR in the world. So to answer your question, yes, we have incorporated GPT-3 technology into Amiga as one of the bases of the tool.
Great. And Tressa, how about you and Burrelles?
Yeah, I think one of the things that people don't realize is just about anyone using a monitoring service, as Frank alluded to when he was speaking, have already been using AI. We use AI for image and photo identification and monitoring, again, as Frank mentioned, sentiment analysis, all those kind of things that monitoring tools have been providing have been have had some form of AI, and that, we know that's a broad term. Most of it is large language models or machine learning. So I think that the ChatGPT launch got people in our industry talking about it. Obviously, that's why we're here today. So I think that was great. And we're now being able to identify, you've already been using AI, but just like Zach, and as Frank mentioned, through our partnership with Agility, we launched PR Copilot, which is generative AI. It is built on ChatGPT technology, and it helps produce a press release and pitch emails. So very similar. And I think we're going to keep seeing more. Propel launched theirs, Agility and Burrelles launched ours. Frank mentioned Profit is launching, I think, any day now, or maybe already did. And I'm sure that, the other two big guys are breathing down the necks of their engineers to get something out.
Sure.
Especially when there are companies who aren't as large, like Propel and Burrelles and that who are at the forefront of this. That we've actually finally got the big guys. We're doing something they aren't yet. So.
Well, I figured I'd love to talk more about use cases, as we're hearing it's much more expansive than simple content generation. But let's first get some of the challenges out of the way, because we haven't talked a lot about them. But we know when you have great buzz, you also get naysayers and sometimes skepticism. So why don't we just go through this list of criticism we've heard about ChatGPT and also AI, and see if it's posed challenges to you, your companies. Just get your reaction, basically. The first one, I think, and Frank alluded to this, and what we commonly hear about is, will AI take my job away as a PR person, or as a journalist for that matter?
Yeah, I think the answer is right now, as we know it, the answer is clearly no. But your job might be taken away from another PR person that is using AI tools. So it is a tool. It is a tool to improve efficiency, to do things differently, to look at data sets that you can't analyze on your own, and approach the same problem with the assistance of AI.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Frank. I actually believe that AI tools are exactly what PR and comms professionals could only dream of, because there are so many things within the PR workflow that are very time consuming, that are repetitive, redundant, and honestly, that PR professionals typically don't enjoy doing. Heavy research of specific media list contacts, a lot of time goes towards drafting things. If you could have a tool that would do 80% of the legwork. Now, it's never going to do 100%, nor should it do 100, nor do we want it to do 100. And it cannot do 100. It's not human. But it can do 80% and basically allow you as a PR professional to free up so much of your time to do the parts of the job that all of us love, whether that's creative messaging, building relationships, thinking of new campaigns, the more creative and human elements of the job.
Seems to me that the PR tech field and PR generally has been laggards with adoption of technology. I know you've touched upon this yesterday in the webinar. and there was some opinions offered. My theory is that PR as a field is much smaller than advertising, for example. So there's fewer dollars, VC dollars, flowing to this form of MarTech. And Zach, hats off to you for going out there and starting a company. I mean, that is awesome, and you developed this technology. But do you think part of the problem is just that there's not enough development being done in the PR tech space, or as far as
yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Bob. I appreciate the nice words. And I think that the opportunity is endless. It's simply an issue of not a lot of entrepreneurs and investors choosing to tackle this problem. We did choose to do so, and we're excited to be bringing a lot of innovation in this field. Our team, a lot of our team comes from PR. I myself come from PR. So we've experienced the pain points firsthand, and we're passionate about helping to improve the lives of PR professionals.
Okay.
And I think that more and more VC money is starting to flow in. We saw a massive round with Muckrack last year. And, so more institutional investors are starting to see the opportunity. We raised $6 million, led by NFX, which is an institutional VC firm. So
cool.
I think that the lights are starting to go on in that area. And I hope that continues.
One of the other things we've heard is that some of us experienced directly is that you can get sometimes very weird results in ChatGPT. And Frank, I'm not sure I agree these are always like intentionally coaxed. I mean, I think sometimes they just happen. You put an innocent prompt in there and it comes back with weird information. So how do you deal with that? I mean, and more generally, taking it back to the question about jobs, I mean, let's face it, a lot of folks are going to go out there and maybe get a little bit lazy with writing their pitches and producing content. And if ChatGPT can do it, why not do it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'd go back to like manual labor and a carpenter banging nails, right? If the carpenter bangs a nail and it goes in crooked, who do you blame? Do you blame the nail, the hammer, or the carpenter? I think you blame the carpenter. And I think the same thing is with AI. It is a tool much in the way that a hammer is a tool for banging nails. And so it's in the wielder's case. And I think one of the reasons why PR people need to pay attention to this is because they need to understand how these models work and understand what the inputs are and how to improve their inputs in order to get better outputs. Because with any information technology, this has been a cliche in the technology world forever, is garbage in equals garbage out. If you feed AI a bunch of nonsense, you're going to get a bunch of nonsense on the back end. So you have to really understand what it is what the capabilities of the AI tool are, and then make sure your inputs are refined to fit that processing and that capability in order to get a good result.
That makes sense. Zach and Tressa, let me ask. Well, Tressa, you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to go back to your question that you asked about PR pros being sort of slow on the uptake or being more hesitant. I think that it's not that we're Luddites. I think that it has more to do with being cautious and having a healthy degree of skepticism.
Right.
I don't think that they don't want to use these tools. I think they want to wait till they're proven, or they want to prove it themselves, as Frank did when he wrote that article where he actually tested ChatGPT and got results back out of it. So I think people are going to be much more quick to adopt this than perhaps at first glance. Some of the statistics I've read recently are, given the state of the economy, or the perceived state of the economy, I guess I should say, depending on where you stand, but is that many of us are doing more with less and with fewer resources. And AI in its multiple forms, but specifically AI assisted writing, I think that once people start to use it, will find that it will help save time. It's not going to take anyone's job, as everyone has agreed. A human has to be involved in it, because AI can only do so much. Like Zach said, it's not human. But I think we just need to give them a little time. This is all happening pretty fast.
Makes a lot of sense. Are you concerned whether it's Copilot or Amiga with the content or the results that come out? I mean, is that something that you're somehow...
I'm sure that those results would be different. They would probably be a little different in every tool that you used. Regardless, I think it's what people get comfortable with, what meets their needs the best. I think that's the biggest thing, is the tool needs to meet the PR pros need first. Then you decide who,
Right.
or which company, whatever they're going to go with. First, look at each one and say, okay, which one best meets my use case scenario? So I think it's just going to be whichever one they like better.
This is part of what we want too. I love the fact we have Tressa and Zach on, and you have one vendor that's been around for ages and ages, since they had people cutting out newspaper articles in a small room in Maine, right? And you have this new startup on the scene, and they're both competing in AI. That is going to make things better, and the market is going to decide. Those two are going to have to compete to vie for the investment or procurement dollars they can get, and that is a good thing for the community, right? A rising tide lifts all boats.
100%.
Very well said.
Totally agree. And one of our priorities, which I mentioned yesterday in the webinar as well, is that this remains safe, that AMI remains a safe, respectful, positive thing for the industry and for everyone in the industry. We've taken some measures to make sure that the content being generated is as safe as possible. And I personally look forward to working with Frank and others in the industry, thought leaders, organizations, business leaders to put all of our minds together, Tressa as well, and to understand, what do we need to do to keep AMI safe for the community.
That makes sense. I think at the agency level, management has to come up with policies for the use of this kind of technology. And using some kind of AI does not absolve the manager or the PR person of responsibility in ensuring quality pitch, accurate information, and that it's effective. So we all have to watch that. Was there any, those are a few concerns I've heard. Were there concerns that you've encountered in your work that you'd want to talk about or try to refute?
I don't have a concern, but this goes back to the comment about the industry and the state of investment. I mean, if you look at the PR market, and it depends, there's different estimates about how big it is, but let's say for illustration's sake, it's somewhere between 10 and 15 billion. If you look at like advertising, if you talk just TV ads alone, that's 80 billion. it costs $7, $8, $9 million for a 30-second spot on the Super Bowl this year. The market is just an order of magnitude much larger. And so they have more to gain because there's a lot more money involved. So there's more at risk. And so that's why I think you see more investment going into advertising, but that's not necessarily a bad thing for PR, because we can benefit from some of that tools. We've seen this in other areas, like not necessarily related to AI, but like earned media attribution, right? A lot of that is just ad tech. They're using that. It's the same technology to measure the effectiveness of your ad, and they're just applying it to articles. So,
right. So that's a good segue to our next topic, and that is, where are we going from here? How can AI make our lives better and help us be better at our jobs and deliver better results?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that. So if we kind of zoom out and look at recent history, every 14 years, there's been a major tech revolution. So in 1993, we saw the internet browsers come about and start to take off. In 2007, 2008, we saw the smartphones come about, and that was the greatest revolution since the internet browsers. And then in 2022, just in the last few months, we saw the next amazing, enormous tech revolution, and that is generative AI. And we are in the heart of it right now. This is the ground zero. This is the moment. And our industry is extremely fortunate because we are set to be among the most impacted, for sure. And there's a very simple reason for that. The developments in AI over the last few months are all around language and natural language. And the PR industry, as we know, and communications industry is all about language and communication, and writing. And so this industry is literally going to be unrecognizable in 10 years. And I think the next 3 to 5 years is going to be tremendous. I think the next year is going to be tremendous as well. And I think it's a very exciting time.
Great. Tressa, do you have some thoughts on that?
I can probably not imagine all the things that AI can do. I'm not a tech person. Like Zach seems to have, and Frank, I think they're both techier than I am, so to speak, but I'm a power user of anything I like.
Good.
So I can't wait to try the different things out. I mean, I've already found some AI tools I never knew existed. I mean, everybody knows about ones that can create video or art. Now we've got written text. There are tools out there that can, I saw someone turned on like the Otter AI, the transcription,
Sure.
Summarizing videos or long text. I think for me, in general, especially as it relates to PR, the part I'm most excited about is to really get into the analytics. We already, most of us use some minor forms of AI in calculating analytics. But when you can connect media and PR side to things like, connect your Google Analytics, so to speak,
Right.
with it and really do measurement in a way that's going to make a whole lot more sense to the C-suite, I think that's going to be revolutionary. And I'm not saying that tech doesn't exist. I think there may be a couple of the worldwide PR firms that have built some things in-house. I know we can connect Google Analytics to our measurement dashboards, but there's still a lot of human process that you have to go through to get everything lined up right. So, when I sent out a press release, did that correspond with traffic on the site and all of that? But I think as PR people, we don't, it's not that we don't like analytics. It's just, we want it to be easier, I think.
Well, I think we're afraid of it. We're not bean counters.
Right.
We want to get the results. We don't necessarily want to measure them, but you can't
Exactly.
manage what you don't measure, right? So that's
Exactly.
extremely important to be able to measure and measure well and
Right.
eventually show attribution.
Yeah.
Talk about
And like Frank, I was just going to say, like Frank said, that's basically sort of borrowing from the marketing tech, right? I mean, they and advertising both were at the forefront of using Google Analytics to report results and things. And I think PR has been slow on the uptake on that one, but it also could be that those areas are siloed off in their organizations where it makes it challenging. I'm sorry, Zach, you were going to say something?
Frank or Zach, was somebody going to say something? I don't know.
I was going to say, in terms of use cases, like I've lost count of the number of times that I've sat in my living room at 10 o'clock at night and think, oh gosh, I need to buy this thing and I forgot to get it. And I whip out my phone and I pull up Amazon app and I order it. And lo and behold, to my surprise, the next morning by 10 a.m., it's on my doorstep. That happens because of all of the 20 years of stuff that Zach described from 1993 with the browser all the way to the mobile phone. And so where we are with this generative AI is very early stages. We are just at the very beginning of what we're going to be able to do. Are we talking about ChatGPT? I think it's version 3.5?
Yeah.
We got ways to go.
Pretty early
and
days.
It's going to get better and better as they use different data sets and refine the data sets and figure out how to train this thing. I mean, a couple of the simple use cases now, like I've already used it to like rewrite content. So I'll write a blog post, press release, whatever for a client. And then I'll plug some of that stuff into ChatGPT and say, hey, give me another subhead for this. And I'll list it as an alternate subhead, present it to the client as generated by AI. Here's what it was, here's my headline, here's their headline. And I've had clients actually choose the subhead that ChatGPT wrote, which, broke my heart. But at the same time, I was like, I'm using this tool and they're getting value out of it. It was more of a pragmatic description. Mine was a little more cutesy, and that's what they wanted. So that works.
The client knows ChatGPT that did that.
Oh yeah, I clearly mark all that stuff so that they know.
Transparency.
There's no smoky mirrors going on there. But I think, when you think about that, there's going to be a couple other easy applications right off the bat. It's going to be pointing it at your competitor's website and say, show me how the positioning has changed over the last 5 years. It's going to be for internal communicators, pointing it at that SharePoint, which nobody goes to and likes because it's a clogged, messy, aggregate of data that's been just shoved in there for the last 10 years, and say, summarize our internal communications for the last 10 years, or what are the 5 pieces we need to learn? It's just going to speed up our ability to ingest relevant information and make better decisions based on what we see. So early stages, we've got a long way to go. I think it's a really exciting time to be in the space.
There's a couple of use cases that we've encountered. That's very helpful, Frank. But I'll add a couple more to the mix. Actually, Frank, you also work in the technology sector, right?
Yeah, B2B. Yeah, that's all I do.
So sometimes I'm sure you and we deal with very esoteric areas of technology. So if we're in a field like quantum computing, which we are, and you bring a new team member on, you want to be able to help them learn about it.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT is good at summarizing. And you could say, give it to me, please, at a 6th grade or high school level. Make it simple first. Let's start out simple. And ChatGPT will take very complex topics and kind of, I hate to say dumb them down, but make them easy to understand. We found that's it's useful for that. Another thing, doing research for a proposal that I was writing, just helped me understand how a certain content project might be priced. I mean, there's so many different kinds of assignments to give it, I think. Any other use cases, maybe case studies? Is it too soon to talk about real world case studies of success using ChatGPT-like technologies or other forms of AI?
I know it's a little early for us to know anything yet.
I'd love to put a bug in Zach's ear too, but I'd love to see the vendors have greater, and I think this would be more on the machine learning side, but more application of like being able to provide feedback and tell the system, you made this suggestion, either a search to do or a reporter to follow or a time to write. And maybe I decide that I don't like it, right? I didn't like the input and I don't like the output. I want to be able to tell it less like this, more like this one, right? I want to be able to give it some feedback so it can fine tune on the fly and start developing customizations that better suit my needs, if you will.
What about pitch analytics? Zach, does yours, I think the system does pitch analytics, doesn't it?
Yeah. So our PRM, which we launched 4 years ago, really the basis of it is workflow and analytic improvement for PR. So we have deep drill analytics into productivity of each campaign, each team member, each individual, each pitch, each journalist relationship. We also, Tressa was talking about earned media attribution. We have business outcomes dashboard we launched with Google Analytics integration that automates all of that and can essentially tell you like, you had a big spike in traffic on May 3rd, and that was either directly attributed to X article or generally correlated to Y article. So we have a lot of analytics in Propel. I think some of the other use cases though, to answer your question, Bob, there's some interesting things around understanding behavior of journalists. When do they actually open a pitch? What day of the week do they prefer to open and respond to pitches? Which hour of the day? Out of the pitches they've actually engaged with, what are the topics in those pitches? Anyone can go analyze public articles. But imagine you have like, sort of 1,000 pitches that have been sent to John Smith at Forbes, and you can understand, oh, he's replied to 300 of these. What are the topics of those 300? What gauges his interest in an actual pitch? So I think, and Propel has these abilities through Amiga. So I think there's a lot of different use cases. I think if we zoom out, there's sort of an era of abundance coming from generative AI and from AI in general. I think that it's going to make our industry and pretty much every industry have to require a lot less labor. I think it's going to make things a lot easier, enjoyable, and it's going to free up the mind space of people to pursue more ideas, more creativity, more of the things they love. And I think it's going to really usher in, an era of abundance. So I think that everyone should be quite excited about it. Obviously, there are, certain risks. We have to make sure that it remains a safe and positive influence. We have to, have the community make sure that they're involved and that AI becomes regulated to some extent. But I'm very optimistic about the future.
Well, maybe those are nice words to end on. Any other final thoughts? Anything to share about what's coming up with each of you, or anything you want to promote?
I think I read something. This is from another industry, but you mentioned working in B2B, and one of the interesting things, Bob, is that you can take kind of these things that you see from other segments and apply them. So I work in legal tech. I've done some cybersecurity, supply chain management, and some marketing automation, and all of those things have different applications. And there's one really smart guy in legal is looking at, because legal is a very specific type of work. You have to have a license to practice it, at least in the US, I think in other countries too. They've got similar critics to us. And one of the things that he said that really stuck with me is like, large language models will continue to advance at a rapid pace. And while there are many attempts at applying them in legal, or in this case, PR, some applications will be bad, some will be good. Cutting through the hype and properly assessing these applications will require some work. Nobody's going to know nobody's going to know what's going to happen. And we're all making bets. If you're for it, you're making a bet. If you're against it, you're making a bet. If you abstain because you think it's hype, you're making a bet. So I think that's something to think about as we move into this field.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, listen, I thank everybody for taking the time to join our podcast and share your insights. Zach, Tressa, Frank, we'll stay tuned and look forward to further developments from each of you. And from Propel, from Burrelles, and Frank, your blogging. Love to read your blogging. And look forward to staying in touch.